Hey everybody, and welcome back to another cooking video here on the channel. And today we're going to be making what is known as a salmon Coulbiac. And first we have some work to do, a whole 24 hours before we actually start cooking. So here I'm going to be making a lemon butter spread of sorts that's going to be going on top of the fish. And this is a fish dish that gets wrapped in a pastry. So this bowl here is some softened butter with some lemon zest, a little bit of salt, a lot of fresh picked dill, and some paprika as well, all combined together like that. Here I'm going to be chopping some more dill that we're going to be using later on. A quick tip for those of you who don't know is you can actually place a towel underneath your cutting board in order to help it not move around and shake around, give it some stability, fighting off all that friction. So it doesn't really matter how finely you get this. I could have chopped this a lot finer, although I know the details are a little difficult to see, but we're going to put that off to the side over here. And you will want to save the lemons that you zested earlier. All of this is going to be combined together for a sauce later on the next day when we actually start cooking the dish. So fast forwarding here, it's the very next day and I just boiled some rice. And for those of you who only ever use a rice maker and want to do it in a pot, you know it's done when you've kept it on low heat for 15 to 20 minutes and you see no water like that. So once that's done, I'm actually going to take some cold scoops of butter in here and mix it in. You can melt it in if you want. It really doesn't make too much of a difference. It's gonna actually melt down regardless, because since I just freshly made this, actually a lot of heat in between all the different grains. So as I mix it around, more steam, as you can probably see on camera, gets released and helps melt the butter down, making my job a little bit easier, but melt it if you want to. Now we're finally going to be working with the salmon, and this salmon unfortunately came with skin. If you can't buy any salmon fillets that are skinless, you can go ahead and take a deboning knife. It's really skinny and flat like this, and try to shave it. If you have all this extra, do not throw it away. The flesh of the salmon you can actually save as a snack for filling of a rice ball. You can slice it off the way that I'm exampling to you here for some gravlax, and you can save the skin and fry them in a pan for some chips as well. So put that to the side and use it later on. Now, getting back to work here, we're gonna go ahead and wipe down a surface to make sure that we don't infect anything, since we were just working with fish. And we're gonna take our puff pastry here and we're going to fold it this way in thirds almost. And once it's stacked up like that, you're just gonna roll it out. I fast forwarded here because I don't have a lot of space to work with, so it took a really long time for me to do it. You wanna make sure that you have it nice and thin, how it looks there, and you wanna get it into a semi-rectangular shape. You know, if you can't get it into a perfect rectangle, it's all good, no worries. The most important part is that it is the right dimensions in order to fit your salmon. So you want to pay attention to the length and the width of your fish as you roll this. Once you get it all done, you're going to go ahead and place this onto parchment paper onto your baking tray. Again, pay attention that the baking tray is big enough to fit your fish. And here I'm using a fork and a ruler in order to measure out 1 inch of distance on the perimeter of the dough. Now I'm taking my butter mixed rice, and with this butter rice, I'm going to make a nice and even spread using about half of what I have in the pot in order to put it on the bottom. That way the salmon will be covered in the rice when it cooks. And before I put it on, I'm going to take a quick spatula and I'm going to move this butter all around it, spread it out really nice. It's not going to completely melt down, and there are parts that are cold, and that is completely fine if your butter comes out this way. Since you are putting it in an oven after all, the butter is going to go ahead and melt all over and distribute its spices and its juices onto the fish. So no worries about that. The idea is to keep it covered up, and now there we have it. If you have splotches like that, you don't have to worry about that. It is a-okay. You know, it'll all melt out and even out. And conceptually, you want to cover it all with rice and trap it all with the dough. That way you can actually trap the juices of whatever meat you're cooking and you don't lose anything. It makes a really nice product. So with our second baking sheet, we're gonna be covering over the fish. And I do want to point out, as you can see in the corner, I forgot to put the rest of the rice. I was kind of in a rush to do this, so please do not make the same mistake I did. If you did, it's fine, but you just want to pay attention to those kind of things. Now here in this next slide, I'm going to be making these little slash marks into a third sheet of pastry, and this is going to be purely for decoration. I'm going to be stretching it out. I didn't do it evenly, and I've never attempted this dish before, nor have I ever used this sort of technique for design or anything. So forgive me for how sloppy it looks for any professionals who are watching. If it rips, you don't have to really worry about it. You can just kind of stretch it out more and try to even it out. Now, with the fork, what I'm doing is I'm pressing the prongs along the edges of it just for decoration, but also because it kind of helps seal it off a little bit, make sure there's not too many air pockets so that nothing is kind of leaking out of the bread. Now, in a small dish, I went ahead and whisked with a fork a single egg, and I'm just kind of brushing it over. This is known as an egg wash, and an egg wash will help promote a brownness of a pastry, because not all pastries are going to get brown since you're not cooking it for an incredibly long time. You're preheating your oven to about 350, and you're going to only leave it in there for about an hour. Now, what I do that a lot of other people don't do is I salt the crust to help give it a little bit of depth of flavor and add on to all of that. So we're going to go ahead and bake this bad boy and check it out in a minute. Now I'm going to be going ahead and starting off with the sauce. I just melted butter in the pot, and now I'm going to be adding in about half a cup's worth of the lemon juice that we had earlier. Once you're done whisking that and kind of moving it around, making sure that it's as incorporated as you can personally get it, then you're going to go ahead and throw in the dill that you had chopped earlier that day. And you're going to want to whisk this in there as well. It's going to look a little weird at first, but trust me, as it sits and as it cools, it'll look a lot better. You want it nice and runny like that. You don't need to congeal it or, solidify it, nothing else. So now it's time to finally check on the Coulbiac, and we have that beautiful golden brown thanks to the egg wash. All the juices that are kind of leaking out are mostly just butter and whatnot. It's not a whole lot of fish juice that's leaking out, so it'll be nice and perfect. And you just slice and serve like that with a bit of sauce. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know how it turns out if any of you decide to try this, and I'll see you next time.